She thought her shift would end with a routine report and cold coffee. Instead, she watched her career dangle over a single red word, blinking on someone else's phone. Live. The overhead fluorescents at the front desk always flickered like they were too tired to shine. I was just as tired. 3 reports deep, my back aching, and the station reeking of burnt coffee and unresolved tension. You could always tell when something bad had happened, not because of what people said, but because of what they didn't. The silence, sharp and pressing, wrapped itself around the walls tighter than any siren ever could. I was halfway through typing up an incident file when Sergeant Klein's heavy boots thundered down the hallway like bad news with a badge. He didn't knock, just barged in with that sneer that made every woman in the department grit her teeth a little harder. He slapped a folder on my desk like it owed him something. "Corrected statements, officer. Read, sign, file," he barked. I blinked. Corrected by who? Doesn't matter. Sign them or you're off the next shift rotation. His tone could strip paint. The first page had my badge number on it, my name. But the words weren't mine. Not even close. I scanned the lines. Key details were missing. Important timestamps fudged. Descriptions sanitized. The guy who raised his fists at the teen? Gone. The part where the responding officer hesitated for 6 minutes before calling medical? Also gone. It read like we'd all handled it with grace and professionalism. Which was rich, since I'd been the one calling out protocol violations in real time while the others whispered about how to handle the optics. I looked up. This is falsification. Klein leaned in, the stink of old breath and overconfidence wafting from him like a second skin. It's survival. You think you'll last here by being a martyr? The others already signed. Don't be stupid. Every instinct told me to say nothing, to keep my head down like I'd been trained. But something curdled in my stomach, an old memory of my academy instructor's voice. You are the last line of truth in the chain. If you lie, the whole damn thing breaks. I didn't notice the woman standing behind Klein until she stepped forward. Mid-20s, faded red hoodie, cracked phone in her hand. The lens on her camera was pointed straight at us. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, smiling like she wasn't sorry at all. "But I'm live streaming. We're up to 8,000 viewers. And they're curious why a sergeant just told a junior officer to sign corrected statements." Klein froze like a statue in bad lighting. The room contracted around us. Everything felt louder. The humming lights, the rustle of paper, the blood in my ears. I caught a glimpse of the timestamp on her stream. 1832, the red live in the corner of her screen pulsed like a heartbeat. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Klein hissed, "Turn that off." The blogger just widened her grin. "Sure, as soon as your officer signs that confession. Smile for the archive." I didn't smile. I stood up, slid the papers back into the folder, and placed it on the desk like it was radioactive. "I'm not signing anything I didn't write." Klein's jaw ticked. "Then you've just volunteered for the night beat, alone, out in the industrial zone." "Great," I said. "I like the quiet." The blogger raised her eyebrows. "Ballsy. I like her." She turned the camera back to her own face, but not before she caught the exact moment Klein yanked the folder away like a magician hiding a failed trick. I knew I'd made enemies, but I also knew I wasn't the one lying. They told us silence kept us safe. That night, I learned silence only protects the powerful. And the red "live" on a stranger's phone? It became the only thing standing between me and the end of my badge. By the time I reached the industrial zone, the city had exhaled all its light. Street lamps blinked over rusted fences and warehouses with more broken windows than working ones. It smelled like wet concrete, spilled fuel, and secrets too old to scream. The silence out here wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. I parked the cruiser in front of a crumbling loading dock and reported my location to dispatch. Unit 517, Solo Patrol, Zone 6, 1903 check-in. My voice felt steadier than my hands. The push-to-talk button clicked louder than usual in the quiet. The warehouse ahead looked abandoned, but the light inside flickered. Not a bulb, a phone, a live stream. I moved slowly, hand resting near my belt. The city's veins ran through places like this. The forgotten, the discarded, the people who knew no one came unless there was blood. Tonight, I wasn't sure if I was the protector or the target. Inside, I found 2 teens and a man, lean, wild-eyed, desperate. He looked at me like I was the last person he wanted to see, even before I spoke. "You live streaming?" I asked the girl. She nodded, visibly trembling. "He said, if we screamed, he'd make us disappear." She didn't need to explain. I could see it in their eyes. I kept mine on the man. "Let's talk outside." "No," he said. "I've seen what you pigs do. I know what happens when we're alone." His voice cracked, and it wasn't all rage. It was fear, old and coiled tight. He didn't know me, but he knew enough uniforms like Klein to assume we all wore the same lies under our badges. I reached for my mic slowly. Suspect engaged, requesting backup. Static, no response, no surprise. I kept my voice level. "They're kids. You don't want this getting worse." "I don't want anything," he spat, "except to be left alone." The camera in the girl's hand shifted toward me. That red dot blinked again. Live. I felt the weight of it, not like a threat, but like a witness. It didn't lie. It didn't rewrite events in a back room. It just saw. We stood there, time balanced on the edge of something awful. Then he ran. Not at me. Away. I didn't chase. I checked on the teens, called in again. Still no dispatch. I drove them home in silence. One of them cried when we passed a squad car, and she realized I wasn't handing them off. I didn't ask questions. I just waited until they were safe, then headed back to the precinct. The front desk was empty. Unusual. I scanned in, turned the corner, and found internal affairs waiting. A tall woman with steel-gray eyes stood up. "You're Officer Medina?" "Yes." She held up a tablet, froze the image, a still from the stream. Me, Klein, the timestamp at the bottom, 1832. "We're pulling all materials related to this incident, including the unaltered witness statements you refused to sign." My pulse kicked. "Am I being investigated?" She tilted her head. "No. You're the only one here not lying." A beat passed. I let it sink in. She turned the tablet back toward herself. "The captain wants to see you. Now. When the system cracks, it doesn't start with a gunshot. It starts with a signature you refuse to fake. And when internal affairs pulls you into a room alone, sometimes it's not to punish you. It's because you're the only clean page in a stained report. You won't believe what the captain says in the next chapter. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens when loyalty collides with the truth." She refused to lie. Now the real story begins. The hallway to the captain's office had never felt so long. Each step echoed off the polished floor like a countdown. My boots sounded louder than usual, or maybe it was just the adrenaline refusing to fade. When I knocked, a voice called out, calm, composed, clipped. "Enter." Captain Rains was standing at the window, arms folded behind his back. He didn't turn when I stepped in, didn't offer a seat. The blinds were cracked open just enough for the light to slash across his uniform, making the brass on his shoulder glint like a warning. "Officer Medina," he said finally, eyes still on the city. "Close the door." I did. He turned, face unreadable, the kind of expression that made rookies panic and veterans overthink. "I watched the 1832 live stream last night, twice. I didn't say a word. I wasn't sure what I was allowed to say." Rains moved to his desk, tapped a manila folder. Internal Affairs is digging through every inch of this department. Statements, radio logs, even the break room surveillance. You've drawn a spotlight, and not just on yourself. I braced for it. The subtle warning, the quiet threat, the disappointment masked as discipline. But instead, he said, "You held your ground." That stunned me more than anything Klein had thrown at me. "Sir?" He opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots from the live stream. My refusal. Klein's face frozen mid-threat. The girl's camera, capturing it all in shaky clarity. We can't afford officers who fold under pressure. But we also can't afford officers who fold the truth. He leaned forward, tapping one particular still. The moment I pushed the falsified witness statement away. You made the right call, and the hard one. He let that hang for a second, then added, "But don't mistake that for a free pass. You've lit a fire in a building full of dry paper." I nodded slowly. "Understood?" Rains sat back, eyes sharp. "I've reassigned Sergeant Klein to desk duty until further notice. He's not to speak with you, not to contact you, not to step near your cases. Internal Affairs will handle him from here." I should have felt relief, maybe even satisfaction. But what I felt was something colder, caution, because Klein wasn't the only one who signed those corrections. "Sir, what about the others who falsified the statements?" He studied me, then said carefully, "That's more complicated. The culture here didn't start with Klein. Cleaning this up will take more than policy. It'll take people willing to lose comfort to keep integrity." He didn't have to say it outright. I was now one of those people, voluntarily or not. Before I could respond, his desk phone buzzed. He glanced at it and waved me off. "You're dismissed, Officer Medina, and good work." I left the office with the kind of clarity that only comes when you realize your next steps will either build something better or destroy what's left. Back at my desk, my inbox was already pulsing with tension. One message stood out. Subject: "We saw you." Sender: "Anonymous body. Front desk. Midnight. Bring nothing." I stared at it for a long minute, my hand frozen over the mouse. Because out here, truth had a cost. But silence had body counts. The station at midnight felt like a different world. Gone were the clattering keyboards, the endless phone rings, the forced laughs around stale coffee. What remained was the hum of machines on standby and the low, steady throb of fluorescent lights. I walked to the front desk, footsteps soft, deliberate. The night shift clerk, a temp I didn't recognize, barely looked up, just nodded toward the benches. There, in the far corner, sat a woman I hadn't seen in 2 years, Detective Elena Park. She used to be the kind of officer everyone noticed: sharp suits, sharper instincts, and a reputation for digging where she wasn't supposed to, until she suddenly transferred out, or, as the whispers said, was encouraged to vanish. She stood as I approached, phone in hand, her eyes scanning the hallway behind me before speaking. "You've made enemies," she said quietly, "and allies you don't know you have." "I got your message," I said, nodding at her screen, "but you didn't send it from your name." "Couldn't risk it. Some of them monitor internal comms." She paused, then showed me a photo on her phone, blurry, zoomed in, time-stamped. It showed 3 officers in a meeting room with Klein. One of them was Lieutenant Garcia. Another was Chief Rourke's aide. "They've been coordinating statement revisions for months," she said. "Yours wasn't the first, just the first that didn't stay quiet." I swallowed hard. "And Internal Affairs?" She shook her head. "IA works on proof. This, it's just suspicion. But if we get one more unfiltered incident, One more stream they can't bury. It tips. I leaned back, adrenaline burning cold under my skin. You want me to be bait? No, she said. I want you to be visible, loud, unignorable. They're scared of noise. Her logic made sense. The politics of silence were always most fragile when the quiet was shattered. But I also knew the cost. Once you start making noise, you can't unring the bell. Every action, every report, every routine traffic stop becomes a loaded test. She slid a flash drive across the bench. Everything I've got. Hidden cam footage, redacted reports with the originals recovered, communications logs with discrepancies. I didn't touch it. Why me? Because you didn't blink when they threatened your shift, she said. You blink now, it'll all fall apart. My radio crackled just then. A call from dispatch. Unit 517, respond to incident on Holloway and 9th. Suspicious activity reported. Civilian livestream in progress. My eyes met hers. This isn't coincidence. It never is. I grabbed the drive and left. Every step toward the cruiser felt heavier. When I reached Holloway and 9th, a small crowd had already gathered, drawn like moths to the glow of a live stream. 2 uniforms I didn't recognize stood stiff in front of a closed storefront. Their eyes flicked to me, then away. Guilty, maybe. Or just annoyed I'd shown up. I spotted the civilian, teenage boy, holding a phone high like a shield. He whispered to his audience, "They don't know I'm streaming. They think no one's watching." Oh, but we were. All of us. The red light blinked again. Lave. The blinking live signal on the boy's phone wasn't just a stream. It was a flare in the dark, a warning, a cry, a mirror. I approached slowly, my badge visible, my posture calm. Everyone okay here? The taller of the 2 unfamiliar officers barely concealed his annoyance. Just dispersing a loiterer, nothing to see. The teen's voice cut through, sharper than expected. I was waiting for my sister. I told them that. They told me to stop recording. My gut tightened. The second officer muttered, he was acting suspicious. I looked at the boy. Thin frame, nervous eyes, but steady hands. Do you have your ID? He nodded and handed it over. The moment felt frozen. Too quiet, too loaded. I turned to the officers. Did you run his name? We were about to. Were you? I asked, letting the words linger. Because what I see is a kid standing on public property, holding a phone. That's not suspicious. That's protected. The boy lowered the camera slightly but didn't stop recording. Smart. I walked over and handed him back his ID. You're good, but maybe wait inside the bodega for your sister, all right? He nodded, relief rushing through his shoulders. Thanks, officer. As he walked away, the taller cop leaned toward me. We don't need you interfering, Medina. We've got eyes on you. Then I hope they're taking notes. Back in my cruiser, I jotted everything down. Time, names, words. The precise moment the live stream timestamp flipped from 22:06 to 22:07 when I stepped in. I knew Elena would be watching. I also knew internal affairs would now have a second stream. 2 incidents, 2 refusals to bend the story. The pressure was building. The next morning, I arrived at the precinct to find every screen in the common room frozen on a paused frame from the stream. My face, mid-sentence, standing between the officers and the teen. Klein was there, back already. He didn't say a word, just looked at me like I'd brought a storm inside. I passed him without blinking. On my desk was a sealed envelope, no name, just a sticker. You were never supposed to see this. I opened it. Inside, a full transcript of the meeting I hadn't been invited to, the one where mediation had been discussed, the one where my name was flagged as a problem to neutralize quietly. A single sticky note was attached. Page 4. Audio exists. And scribbled below that, in handwriting I didn't recognize. They're afraid of what happens if your voice stays live. I didn't know who sent it. Elena? Someone inside IA? Another officer who still believed in the oath? But it didn't matter, because now I had more than a decision. I had momentum. By the end of the week, I could feel the walls breathing, not collapsing, watching. Every hallway step echoed longer. Every sideways glance lingered heavier. My locker was searched poorly. My schedule shifted abruptly. Calls that used to come with backup now returned only static. But I wasn't alone. Elena and I met again, this time in a parked car behind a shuttered diner. No uniforms, no radios, just a laptop balanced on the dashboard and a pair of headphones between us. She pressed play. The audio file labeled Page 4 crackled with low voices, then sharpened. "She's reckless," a male voice said. Another chimed in, "And visible now. We handle this delicately, or we risk a media mess." Someone else laughed. "You can't discipline a hero, not while she's trending." Pause. Then a fourth voice, calm, composed, female. "There are non-disciplinary methods. Shift her to night beats, remove her from joint cases, starve her of oxygen until she quits." A beat of silence, then the final line colder than the rest. "Eventually, even martyrs get tired of bleeding." Elena paused the file. "Recognize anyone?" I did, and I hated myself for it. Lieutenant Garcia, one of the first to congratulate me after the academy. He once told me I had the kind of spine we need more of. Turns out, what they needed was compliance, not courage. "What now?" I asked, eyes fixed on the laptop. Elena smiled grimly. "We leak it. No chain of custody, no IA process." "No," she said, "we burn it, publicly, strategically." I hesitated. This wasn't just noise anymore. It was fire, and fire spread. We agreed on a plan. 3 steps, 1 week, everything airtight. Names, faces, proof, all laid out. And right before I got out of the car, she stopped me. "You know what they'll say if this hits daylight, right?" "That I'm disgruntled," she nodded. "And difficult and dramatic and unstable." I smiled. "Good. That means it's working." Later that night, I checked my messages again. Another anonymous note, this one shorter. "Captain knows. Watch your 6." I didn't sleep. By morning, my precinct ID was disabled. The receptionist, new girl, barely out of probation, looked at me with panic as the red light blinked at the entry terminal. I don't know what's wrong, Officer Medina. Maybe a system error." It wasn't. This was the warning shot. But I walked to the front desk anyway and asked to speak with the captain. He came down himself. "Let's talk in my office," he said calmly, unlocking the door. Inside, he poured 2 cups of black coffee. His hands didn't shake. His eyes didn't blink. "You've made quite the name for yourself, Medina." I sat down. "Truth has a way of sticking." He nodded, as if respecting the game. "I've got people telling me to shut you out, others asking to promote you. You've created a split." "Good," I said. "That means it's working." He smirked. "They're calling for a meeting, civilian press, internal affairs, bloggers. You'll be invited to speak." I looked him straight in the eye. "I'll bring the audio." He smiled again. "I hoped you would." I froze. "You knew?" "I've been waiting to see if someone had the spine to stand upright when the ceiling started cracking. Now I know who to bet on." The coffee tasted bitter, but honest. The conference room had never been used like this before. No stale coffee, no budget spreadsheets, no half-hearted birthday cakes for someone no one really liked. Today, the walls hummed with tension, cameras lined the edges, and half the city seemed to be watching through screens. A civilian oversight committee sat at the front, Journalists flanked the walls, and in the back, hidden in shadows, internal affairs agents observed, eyes sharp, faces unreadable. The live stream camera blinked red again. Live? We were all on the record now. They called my name. I walked to the front in uniform, clean, pressed, polished, just like the truth I'd been holding on to with bleeding hands. I set the flash drive down. "This," I said, "is a conversation that was never meant to leave the walls of this department. It includes names you know, voices you've trusted, and tactics that will make you question who's really keeping this city safe." Murmurs rippled. The moderator asked if I wanted to play the audio now. "No," I said. "I want it entered as evidence, and I want every officer mentioned to be questioned, on record, with legal representation." A few reporters perked up, notebooks scribbling like storms. I paused, then added, "Because if we want the public to trust us, we have to stop pretending that silence is integrity." From the crowd, someone shouted, "She's making it political." I turned toward the voice. "No, I'm making it personal, because I didn't join to rewrite reports. I didn't put on this badge to become a ghost in a chain of lies. I joined because someone has to be the last one who tells the truth when everyone else forgets how." There was a beat of quiet, then slow clapping from the back. Elena. Afterward, while the committee began their deliberations, the captain pulled me aside. He handed me a folded note. Inside, a simple line. "They know now, but do they care yet?" I looked at him. "Do you?" He held my stare. "Let's find out together." As I walked out of the conference room, a civilian, young, wide-eyed, caught up to me. "You're Officer Medina, right? The one from the blog stream?" "I am." She held up her phone. "You saved my brother." "The boy from the sidewalk." I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. "He saved himself. I just didn't stop him." She smiled. "Doesn't matter. You didn't lie, and that saved us more than you know." Outside, the city was still broken, but for the first time it felt like someone was taping the cracks together instead of painting over them. And somewhere out there, another red live was blinking. The fallout didn't come all at once. It crept in quietly, like rust on metal, like tension behind every polite smile in the precinct hallways. Some officers stopped talking when I walked in. Others looked me in the eye for the first time in months, guilt blooming behind their badges. The news spread fast. The witness statements that had been corrected were pulled for full audit. Internal Affairs opened formal investigations on 5 officers, including Klein, Garcia, and 2 desk supervisors who had facilitated the falsifications. The aides involved in the off-record meeting were reassigned pending inquiry. And the blogger's 1832 livestream? It was archived in a public repository now, linked in every major article with a headline that started something like, "The Officer Who Didn't Blink." But inside the precinct, I was still breathing in a war zone. My locker was vandalized 3 times that week. Files went missing from my desk. A routine call from dispatch redirected me to a location where no backup showed. For the 3rd time. When I reported it, the response from the interim shift lead was a shrug. Must have been a glitch. I didn't argue. I just filed it, logged everything. Time, place, badge numbers. The quiet kind of warfare that leaves no bruises, just scars under the skin. Elena met me in the parking lot that night. Headlights off, radio on. She handed me a new burner phone. "You're not paranoid," she said. "They're trying to scare you back into silence." "It's not working," I replied. But I could feel the edges fraying. My muscles never relaxed. I dreamed of radios with dead batteries and backup that never arrived. "You have protection now," she said, "and pressure. Press outlets are watching, civilian committees too, but most of all, the public's watching. That's power." power I never wanted, but power that had arrived anyway. The captain called me into his office the next morning. No small talk, just a single sheet of paper on his desk, a formal offer, promotion, new division, oversight and ethics liaison. "You'll be hated," he said. "Feared, marginalized, but you'll have authority. Not a lot, but enough." I stared at the paper. Why me? Because when the room went quiet, you didn't, and I need someone in that seat who understands the cost of truth. It wasn't a prize, it was a weapon, and he was handing it to me. "I'll need a team," I said. He nodded. "Start with whoever's still brave enough to walk next to you." I left his office with the offer folded in my pocket. Outside, a civilian was waiting near the reception desk, nervous, holding a phone like it was a shield. "I want to report something," she said, "but I don't want to be told to come back later." "You don't have to," I said. "You're talking to the right person." Because now, the front desk had a new kind of officer behind it. I didn't hang the certificate on the wall. The official letter, signed by the board, stamped with the city seal, stayed folded in my desk drawer, under my duty belt, and a flash drive labeled unedited. A reminder, not of victory, but of vigilance. The new office was smaller than I expected. No windows, 2 chairs, one old coffee machine that sputtered more than it brewed. But there was something sacred about its simplicity. This was not a space for performance. It was a space for truth. My first day as oversight liaison started with a case file slid under my door before 8 a.m. No sender, no note, just a photo of bruises on a civilian's wrist and a witness account that had been shredded, then taped back together. A test. I logged it, routed it to IA, made the first call myself. No fear, no filter. By noon, another file arrived, and another by 2:30, one from a cadet who overheard a sergeant rehearsing an arrest with another officer, one from a civilian who claimed her report had been altered, then buried, one anonymous drop, a map of body cam blind spots in the East Precinct. Each one was a spark, and I wasn't here to put them out. I was here to keep them burning. Word spread fast. Some rolled their eyes, some whispered, some tried to be careful around me, too careful. But others, they started stopping by my door, not with fake smiles, but with real questions. What should I do if I saw someone fake a report? Do you think they'll come after me if I say something? Will someone actually listen this time? The answer was always yes, and then, a week later, a call came through, the blogger. Her voice was warm, amused. "Just checking in. Heard you're becoming a one-woman internal revolution." "Hardly," I said. "More like a walking reminder." "Of what?" "That the record is still running, and that the red live light, it never turns off now." She laughed. "Then you're doing it right." After we hung up, I stared at the blinking cursor on my report screen. So many stories waiting to be told, so many still afraid to speak. But the fear didn't silence me anymore, because somewhere, someone was watching, not to catch me falling, but to see if I'd still stand. And I would. Until the last witness statement was honest. Until the last front desk conversation was clean. Until silence was no longer the safest language in this building. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, no shouting, no scandalous footage, just a manila envelope slid across my desk by a junior officer who didn't meet my eyes. Inside, 2 unsigned statements, identical, word for word, suspiciously perfect. And 1 sticky note. They said to sign or lose my rotation. Thought you'd want to see it first. I looked up, but the kid was already gone. Swift steps down the hallway, like he wasn't ready to admit he'd just chosen a side. I leaned back, heart thudding. I remembered the first time I was handed a falsified statement. the bile in my throat, the way Klein's voice carried across the bullpen like law. I remembered the live stream, the 1832 timestamp, the line I didn't cross. Now someone else was standing where I had, and they'd chosen to walk through it. That's how I knew the culture was breaking, not shattered, but cracking. And cracks let the light in. By that afternoon, 3 more anonymous reports landed on my desk, 1 from records, 2 from patrol, all variations of the same infection, rewrites, erasures, silence. But this time, I didn't handle them alone. I called the officers in, sat them down, told them exactly what I'd learned in the fire. That red live light, I said, isn't just on phones. It's on us. Every time we suit up, every time we say we serve and protect. The public may not see it, but we feel it. And you better believe IA sees it now. I watched their faces shift from fear to something else, something that looked like responsibility. When they left, I stood at the window of the office I never asked for. Below, the city moved in its usual rhythm, flawed, fast, full of people who deserved better. My phone buzzed, a new message from Elena. It's working, quietly, but it is. And then another one, this time from the blogger. Medina, you're trending again, but not for drama, for policy. I smiled. Later that week, during a debrief with the captain, he told me something I didn't expect. There's talk of a citywide oversight task force, civilian-backed, independent. They want you to help build it. I didn't answer right away. I was thinking of the teen on the sidewalk, the girl with the cracked phone, the officers who had looked the other way, the ones who stood up, the ones still watching. I thought of that moment, my moment, when I refused to sign, and how that decision didn't just save me, it opened the door. So I looked at him and said, I'll help, but only if we build it with open doors and no back rooms. He nodded. That's the idea. When I left his office, the precinct felt different, not healed, not perfect, but breathing again. And somewhere, across a dozen phones, in homes, in cars, on live streams blinking red across timelines, someone whispered, she didn't blink, so maybe I won't either. Because the truth, it doesn't knock, it walks in, badge up, eyes forward, and voice, finally loud.